went to the doctor last week, and they were like, hey, you got 4 more weeks. And I said, you mean 2? And they said no. And so I'm struggling a little bit in this thing, and I have to sleep in this. Can you believe that? Yeah, how do you do that? I don't know. It's like by the grace of God, I guess. It's a lot of waking up in the middle of the night and just wishing you could light this thing on fire. But I'm telling you what, these things, they're in hell. They are. It's one of those, if you end up, hopefully nobody ends up there, but if you did, they put these on you and they don't let you take them off, and it's bad. Well, anyways, we're going to continue our series this morning. Last and final week of our series on give up, and if you were here from the very beginning, we talked about giving up control in 2024, and then after control, we talked about giving up your excuses. Anyone been remembering not to have excuses this year? I catch myself every day trying to make an excuse and giving up excuses, and then after that, we talked last week about giving up fear, living in fear. Fear can't stay anymore. And all those things are what are holding us back, not just as Christians, but as people, period, in life. And my mom, she called me yesterday, and she said, what you preaching about tomorrow? I said, well, let me tell you. Today, we're going to be talking about giving up comparison. Ooh, that's a big one. My mom said, man, you're talking about some stuff that people don't usually like to talk about. I said, exactly. This is stuff we need to talk about. We need to talk about things that people don't want to talk about. And this is, I think we're going to end with this one. I mean, there's so many things. I wanted to do, like, give up complaining. And then my wife needed to be, like, give up, like, beating your husband. Because I'm always, if y'all been here for a while, been in a leg. I've had surgery on my foot. And then she pushes me over. But just so many different things we can give up. But I'm just going to end it with this one. Because next week for Super Bowl Sunday is going to be a bang, and it's just going to be hyped, and it's going to be loud, and it's going to be exciting. But giving up comparison. Comparison, it started from the very beginning, and we've looked every single time of where it started, and it's actually just from the seed of sin. And we saw Adam and Eve, after they sinned, they were actually stopped comparing the Creator and went to creation, and then it just followed along in their bloodline. We saw Cain and Abel, and Cain killed Abel. Why? Because of comparison. He was comparing his offering to God to Abel's. And then we see it in Moses. Moses was comparing, saying, I can't do this. I'm not good enough to do this. We saw it in Rachel and Leah. Rachel comparing herself to Leah. And then we see it in Peter and John throughout the Bible, where Peter, when Jesus says, hey, this is what's going to happen to you, he said, well, what about John? So he's comparing, and all throughout life, we are always, every single day, we are comparing ourselves. And it's something that we ought not to do. And so things that we compare, there's 4 of them this morning, and one of them is possessions. We compare our possessions with other people's possessions. Maybe it's the car that you drive, and you're always comparing the person maybe at your stoplight, or the neighbor, right? You go out, you look out the blinds. Babe, our neighbor just got another brand new car. And you're comparing, or you're comparing your clothes, what you're wearing, what they got. They got the Gucci on, right? Who wears that now? I don't know. I mean, I guess. Or you're comparing your salary. Have you ever noticed people they're like, how much you make? And it's like, why are we comparing right now? My dog Aspen, I'm talking about possessions. She's a Bernese Mountain Dog, and she's 105 pounds, maybe, give or take, and she's a big dog. And she thinks that everything that we have to eat, that she needs to eat that. And she just sits there, and she whines. And our other Bernese Mountain Dog, he's so good, he just lays there. He doesn't ask for anything. But our female, she's just whining the whole time. And if Jensen could be eating a Kit Kat, which is her favorite chocolate, is she's eating a Kit Kat, my dog is there whining. But see, she thinks that she needs that and that she wants that, but what she doesn't know is that could kill her. Chocolate's not good for dogs. See, we think we need all this stuff. We think we need these possessions, and God's like, no, you really don't. Some of the things that you think you need could actually hinder you, could actually kill you. So, possessions. Second one is appearance. We compare people's appearance. What maybe if they have hair, maybe if they don't have hair, right? I'm like starting to recede right now, and I'm like, oh, I just need more hair. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not, hopefully not going bald. I don't know. But maybe we compare with appearances, people's body shapes. Maybe they got biceps and triceps, and they're just swole and all that stuff. And then we got people compare performance. Maybe your job, you compare your jobs with other people. Have you ever noticed people are always the first thing they're like, when they meet you, they're like, what do you do for a living? Like, why do you need to know? Because you want to compare. You want to see who's better. Maybe for performance, you're comparing your spouse. Where wives, you're like, oh, well, my husband, he be doing the dishes and the laundry. And then the other wife over here is like, well, man, my husband doesn't do anything. And then they start comparing. I wish my husband would be like this person's husband, or the other way around. You start comparing performance, or a kid on a team, on a basketball team, or when you're in sports, you're comparing to someone else that's playing maybe better than you, or worse. I should be starting. I should be in the starting lineup. Or you should be the one sitting down at the end of the bench. I don't know. Or another one is circumstances. Maybe things that people are going through, or things that they're dealing with, or vacations. They get to go on a vacation while you had to go to Amarillo for your vacation. These people are in Bali just living it up on the beach, and you start comparing your life. Like, I wish I could go on a beach vacation. I had to go to Amarillo. Nothing wrong with Amarillo. But maybe you're comparing that kind of stuff. But something inside of every single one of us, as a human being, we want to know, are we good enough? Are we pretty enough? Are we smart enough? Am I accepted? Am I loved? And the thing is, we get caught up in this thing that we are looking at everyone's director cuts, why we're looking just at our behind the scenes. We're looking at everyone's social media reels, living it up, and we're like, well, we don't have a filter in our life right now. Like, it's crazy right now. So we are looking at what everyone else has when it's all just highs anyways. No one posts really their lows. But this thing called social media has ruined not only our lives, but the generations to come. But comparison makes us think two things. It makes us think, one, I'm not good enough. So when you start comparing, you're thinking, I'm not good enough. And two, I'm going to become better than everyone else. So you're thinking, I'm not good enough. Or you're thinking, I'm going to do whatever it takes to become better than everyone else. And both of those things are wrong. Both of those things aren't right. C.S. Lewis says this: we say that people are proud of being rich or clever or good looking, but they are not. They are proud of being richer or cleverer or better looking than others. If everyone else became equally rich or clever or good looking, there would be nothing to be proud about. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12, it says this: we do not dare to classify or compare ourselves. Dare. Don't dare do it. The Bible's telling us, don't you dare start comparing what someone else has, what someone else is going through. Do not dare classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves when they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves. They are not wise. Why? Because when you compare, it robs your meaning of life. It can destroy your marriage. It can destroy your relationship. It can destroy everything. It can destroy yourself. And so I told in our leaders meeting this morning, I said, success in life is not a matter of being inferior or superior. It is simply being who God wants you to be, not who you wish you were. And we got too many people in life wishing they were someone else, when God said, I created you for a reason. Don't try to be someone else. We don't need another Pastor Brody. Oh, Lord, no. We don't need another kid big and passing out mints all of a Sunday. We'd have too many mints. We want you to be you. Don't be like anybody else. Don't try to act like anybody else. But why does God hate when we compare? I got 4 points for you. Why does God hate when we compare? Number one, comparison devalues your uniqueness. We start looking at, well, what do they have? How did they get that? must be nice to be them. And it takes away from the fact that the Bible tells us we are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? So comparison devalues our uniqueness. Number 2, comparison disrupts your calling. Disrupts your calling. So as long as I'm looking at everyone else, what everyone else is doing, I can't do what God told me to do because it disrupts it. But we got so many people, they want to focus on everyone else, and they're forgetting the main reason why they are here. You want to know why you're here? Go to this book right here. It'll tell you exactly why you're here. Number 3, comparison diverts our focus. Takes our focus away. Always thinking of something else. Gets our focus off of what we are called to do, what we are supposed to do. See, we resent God's goodness in others' lives and ignore God's blessing in our own life. See, we start looking at everyone else and then we miss the whole goodness in their life from God, but then we miss the whole blessing in our own life because we're so focused on what everyone else has and what everyone else is doing. Anyone ever heard of the word FOMO? Fear of missing out. That came out in 2004. It was from some Harvard students, grad students, and they came out with the word FOMO. But before it was FOMO, it was actually FOBO, fear of better options. And that's what our world has tried to tell us. There's so many better options. When God's saying, I have exactly what I have for you right here. But then the same thing in 2004, not just Harvard grad students made FOMO, which it was FOBO, they changed it to FOMO. Then they came out with this thing called Facebook. Wouldn't you like to be them, though? They're making all kinds of money. But I hate it. I hate it because we're all comparing each other on Facebook. It was created in 2004 to basically take a bunch of people and compare each other to people. That's exactly why it was made. That's exactly what they said it was for. And 1 out of 8 people in the whole entire world have Facebook. So that means that's a lot of people comparing their life to someone else's. In comparison, actually, it takes our eyes off of Jesus. It takes our eyes off of Jesus. Anyone know how they kill wolves in Alaska? Anyone? So what they do is they get a knife and they dip it in an animal's blood and then they freeze it. And then it freezes and they dip it again and then they freeze it. And they do this multiple times. And then they stick it in the ground and the wolf comes, smells blood from miles away. It comes and it starts licking the knife. And it starts licking the knife of blood, and then eventually as it starts getting to the bottom, it's cutting its own tongue. But all the wolf can do is taste blood. And it ends up killing itself because it's tasting its own blood and it bleeds to death. That's exactly what comparison is doing to us. It's taking our focus away, and we're not thinking about the pain that it's actually causing us anymore, even though it causes us pain. But we're just thinking, how can I be this person? How can I do this? And then it's actually killing us. And God said, don't compare. What about Black Friday shopping? Anyone Black Friday shop? No, some people are like, anyone buy anything ever on Black Friday? It's like they say it's the best deals ever. It's the worst deals ever. Like all they do is just, they say the price was this, but it was really the same price all along. Well, anyways, whenever a couple years back, we were in Ruidoso for Thanksgiving, and we ended up going to buy a bunch of TVs. And we said, Walmart in Ruidoso on Black Friday, that's the place you go shopping for, because not everyone in Ruidoso wants to get out at the Walmart. And so we said, you know what, we're going to buy all these TVs. Not that we don't need any TVs, right? We want TVs, and then we can resell TVs. Or so-and-so has a 72 at their house, so I need to be like so-and-so, and I'd like a 75 so when they come to my house, I can say, hey, my TV's bigger than yours. And so these deals. And what happens with us is we think we need something when really, like you get the ads on social media as you're scrolling, and you're like, I don't need that, but what? We end up buying it anyways because we think we do. And so we buy all these TVs, and then I don't even know. Some we probably had to give away because we couldn't even sell them or anything. But I'll ask you this morning, that's exactly what comparison does. We start doing things and buying things that God's like, you don't actually even need this. You don't even need to do this. And we find ourselves scrolling, looking at things we're not supposed to be looking at. We find ourselves in aisle 13 in Walmart getting a Black Friday TV when really we're supposed to probably be on aisle 2. I'm telling you, in your life, you're stuck on aisle 12. And God's like, I didn't call you on aisle 12. See, then we're buying these TVs, and then we're on the aisle, you wait in line, and you get it, but then they're like, oh, over here, we got an iPad Black Friday special. And then we're all looking at our family. My sister's like, anyone need an iPad? We're like, yeah, might as well. Comparison. Number 4, comparison. Comparison destabilizes your sense of accomplishment. Destabilizes your sense of accomplishment. Galatians chapter 6 verse 4 says, don't compare yourself with others. Just look at your own work to see if you have done anything to be proud of. You must each accept the responsibilities that are yours. It takes away our accomplishments when we start comparing ourselves. Theodore Roosevelt says this: comparison is the thief of joy. See, what's so amazing one day and what happens to us, but then that night we get home and we start comparing ourselves. Maybe social media, we get on social media, or we start talking to someone. And then what was so amazing ends up becoming so terrible because we destabilized our accomplishment. Think about it. I'm telling you, the messages that I've been preaching, this is exactly like I've told you, I preach to myself because this is me. Because I come here on a Sunday morning and I preach and I'm like, oh my gosh, we just killed this service. It was awesome. People got delivered. People got saved. We laid hands on people last week. People got free from fear. And then I go home, I get on social media, and guess what? I follow all these other pastors. I follow all these other speakers. I follow all these other churches. And then I start thinking, man, did we really do anything that great? Did we really? And so it takes away of our accomplishments what we are doing in our own life. And God's saying, stop comparing. Stop comparing. Rather than compete for what was never meant for you, use that energy to discover what is yours. Rather than compete with someone thinking, oh man, I got to be better than them. Or I got to be like them. Rather than the whole compete thing, why don't you just use that energy to discover what God gave you, what God created you for? Anyone ever like to drive fast cars? I'm not like really big. I like the big stuff. I'm small, so I don't like to be like in sports cars really. I like to be higher up. But when you are, what do? You rev up those RPMs, right? You're going and then it hits red and then you shift it. The problem is a lot of us, what comparison does, it leaves us in the red. Where a car can't sustain, a car can't keep going whenever it's in the RPMs, when it's in the red. You can't drive it the whole time in the red. And that's exactly what comparison does. It leaves us in the red, and we can't keep living in the red. We can't do it. So how do we get rid of comparison? How do we do it? I love this verse in Hebrews chapter 12. We're going to finish it with this verse, and we're going to give you some things from this verse. But it says, chapter 12, 1 through 3, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that is so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. That's how we're going to get rid of comparison. In this verse, I see 5 verbs that we see, and the first one is see. See. Because, see, right before this, chapter is chapter 11 of Hebrews. And they call chapter 11 the faith. This is the hall of faith, the faith chapter. And we see all these people in the chapter that were like Moses and Abraham and Rachel and Noah and people that were big on faith, right? That went before us. And then we get towards the end of the chapter, and it starts telling us all the people in faith that maybe it didn't say their names. It talks about people that were killed and that ended up going through things and died and because of their faith. And so right here it says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. See, these are people of faith. It's a great cloud that is watching us, that is cheering us on. While you're wondering if you are good enough this morning, you have a cloud. You have faith people that are up in heaven, and they are cheering you on to run your race. I love it. I get to think like Moses is up there like, Brody, you got this. I am cheering you on. You got people in the faith that are cheering you on to run your race. So you are good enough this morning. I don't care what your mommy, your daddy said, your job said, whatever. You are good enough. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't have people with this cloud of faith, of witnesses cheering you on. They'd be like, well, they ain't going to do it. No. Number 2, we see rid. Let us throw off everything that hinders the sin that so easily entangles us. We got to get rid of the sin that is entangling our life. Get rid of the haters. Get rid of the negativity. We see in the Gospels when Jesus, he goes and he heals Jairus' daughter. Was it son or daughter? Daughter. And we see that as soon as he gets to the house, what does he do? He gets all the haters out. He gets all the negativity out. You want to stop comparing your life? Get the haters out. Get the negativity out. Get the comparison out. Get the sin out. It says the sin that so easily entangles us. Now, what could sin be? Sin could be jealousy, could be envy. It's comparison. It's even thinking, I'm not good enough. That's sin. So as long as you're looking left and right, you're not able to stay faithful in your lane. So you got to get rid of those things. Number 3, you got to run. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. See, God has a specific assignment for each and every single one of us. Specific assignment. And the devil wants you not to fulfill that assignment. He wants you to think FOBO, fear of better options. I got options. I can go over here and do this. And God's like, I didn't call you to do that. So see, I don't compare my life with your life because we're on a completely different journey. Just like you shouldn't compare your life with someone on social media because they're on a completely different journey than you. Romans chapter 12, 4-8, it says this. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts. Look at your neighbor and say, we got different gifts. According to the grace given to each of us, if your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. And if it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is encouraged, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. See, comparison wants us to look at everyone else's gifts. What everyone else has. Why did they get that? Why didn't I get this? Why did they get to be a leader? Why did they get prophecy? Why? I'm just an encourager. Why do I have to have that? It starts getting our eyes off Jesus. But I want to tell you this morning, no one else can run in your lane. No one else can. No one can run in it. You ever see those people running? And then once they get to a certain point, they get to cross over and then they get to form a line. It's not how it is in the Bible. People don't get to just cut you off and take your lane and take what God gave you. That is your gift. But we got other people, I want to be in this lane over here. This lane's not, I don't really like this lane. Say, I don't care what you like. This is what gifts I gave you. This is what I called you to do. And the best part about being in your lane, that it is your lane, guess what? You're going to finish. No one can finish before you. No one can beat you in your own lane. That's your lane. So whether you want to just say, God, I'm just going to stay here and trust in you a little longer. I've been battling fear, the things we were talking about. I've been battling issues. I'm just going to take it step by step. Or some of you are like, I'm ready to run in my lane and I'm going to go make it to the finish line. Anyone ever done a sack race where you had to like get in the sack and you had to like hop? We got a lot of people. Comparison keeps you in the sack where you can't actually stride, where you can't actually run in your lane. In the 3 cheeseburgers that you ate at McDonald's yesterday isn't what's slowing you down. It's you ate comparison for breakfast this morning. It's because we wake up in the morning and we're eating comparison. That's what's slowing us down. Excuses are slowing us down. Living in fear is slowing us down. Comparison is slowing us down. So stop eating comparison for breakfast. Ephesians 2, chapter 2, verse 10, it says this, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. He prepared you to do something. He's got works for you to do. So we got to do that work. But I can't do my work when I'm focused on what other people's work that they're supposed to do. That I wish I had that work. I wish I had that job. I wish I lived in that house. Babe, so-and-so just got another boat. It's not about that. When you know who you are, you know who you don't have to be. You got to know who you are. Because when you know who you are, you know who you don't have to be. Next verb we see is fix. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. We got to fix our eyes on Jesus. Do you know how many followers you have on social media? Anyone in here? Some of the older people are like, I don't really care. The younger people are like, yeah, I got 652. I just checked. But actually, I just added one. Why, Pastor Brody, what's up? Some of you are like, no, I read the Bible too much. I don't look at that. Yeah, right. You know how many. But I want to ask, not just how many followers you have, but do you know who you are following? Because right here it says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus. The only way to stop comparing ourselves with others is to fix our eyes on Jesus. If you want to compare yourself to somebody this morning, compare yourself to Jesus. Only one that you can compare yourself to. Because he said, be like me. And you look the best when you look like Jesus. When you try to be like Jesus. The next one we see is fight. Who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. See, comparison won't go away unless you fight. It's going to come. When you wake up in the morning, it's going to be there. When you go home today, and I go home and I open up my phone, and I see what all these other churches are doing, what all these other pastors are doing, it's going to try to come in. It's going to try to open up that door. When you go to bed tonight, before you start scrolling on your phone, or you hear, or you go to lunch with your friends and everyone at lunch wants to talk about how great their life is or what they got going on, and you're over there, it's going to try to come set in, but you have to fight to keep it away. And whenever you fight, whenever you run your race, whenever you fix your eyes on Jesus, guess what we're all going to hear? Hopefully we're all going to hear this at the end of our life. Do you know what it's going to be? Well done, my good and faithful servant. See, I don't want to hear when I get to heaven, man, well done, but, you never left the starting line. You stayed in your lane the whole time, but you never even started. Or I don't want to hear, oh, man, you tried to go in someone else's lane and you started knocking their baton out of their hand and tried to take what was theirs when it never was yours. We don't want to hear that. Only God is the one that can say, well done, my good and faithful servant. See, we also want to think, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, oh, yeah, my grandma, she's definitely in heaven, and I guarantee she heard, well done, my good. You don't know that. You don't know that she heard that. Let's be honest. She might have been the greatest person on the face of the earth, but you don't know that she heard that. Why don't you know? Because only God knows what gifts that he gave her. Only God knows the opportunities that he gave her. Only God knows the prayers that she prayed. Only God knows that. So we got to fight for this. Fight for well done, my good and faithful servant. And the more we fight for that, the less we start fighting for comparison. I'm almost done. Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. I don't think it's up there. But it's a parable where the master, he ended up giving talents out to his servants. Y'all might know the parable. And one got 5, and one got 2, and the other got 1. And then I'm sure in that moment, the Bible doesn't tell us, but I'm sure comparisons came in. That door was open, and they're probably looking around, well, why did you get 5? Why did you get 2? Why did you get 1? Why did I only get 1? I'm sure comparison came in. But can I tell you, it doesn't matter how many each one of them got. It's what they did with what they had. So we think, oh, if I could only get this, then I can do something for God. If I could, God's saying, why don't you just do something with what you have? Are you faithful with running with just the one? And if you're here this morning, you're like, man, that's pretty spiritual stuff. I want to give you some practical stuff this morning. And I got just 7 more points. But if comparison has been hindering you, if comparison has been coming at you every morning, every night, this is me, I'm telling you. This message for me, one, I want you to start with gratitude in the morning. Start with gratitude. Be thankful for what God did give you. Be thankful for what you do have. Man, can I tell you, if you actually found out some of the people's lives that you compare yours to that wish it was like that, if you actually sat down with them and said, hey, man, I want you just to be open with me, you'd probably end up being like, they got problems. It's true. We're only looking at the reels. We're only looking at the highlights. We're not looking at the whole thing. So start with gratitude in the mornings. Number 2, have a plan tomorrow for what God wants to do in your life. Have a plan for tomorrow. What does God want to do in my life? Not what is he doing in everyone else's life. That's great. I love that he's working in everyone else's life. But what I want him to do is work in my life. So what do I have to do? What's the plan for mine tomorrow? Number 3, don't always pick the very best person in every discipline to compare yourself to. Don't always pick the very best person. So like, I loved basketball, but I can't compare myself to LeBron James. I know I'm as tall as him, but I can't compare my athletic ability with, that didn't go over well. People are like, they're like Googling, is LeBron really only 5'6"? No. I can't stop comparing yourself. Don't find the best person in every area of things that you want in life that they're the best at. I can't compare myself to Pastor Stephen Furtick. Guy's in North Carolina and has probably 1 million people that watch his stuff every Sunday. I can watch him and I can be like, wow, that's really good stuff, but I can't compare myself to him. Why? Because I'll start getting discouraged. Well, why don't I have that? Why can't I do that? God's like, I've given you specifically something. Number 4, when you find people who inspire you, decipher what you can learn from them versus how you compare to them. Find things that you can learn from them. That people that inspire you. Learn from, like, my dad, I got to learn from him. I got to know things from, I can't compare myself to him, though. My wife was telling me, she said, well, I remember when we first got married, you were always trying to compare yourself to your dad. You were trying to be just like your dad. I can't be my dad. I think he's a great person. I think he's an awesome human being. I think he's one of the smartest people I know ever. And I would take him over Pastor Stephen Furtick. I would. But I can't be him, but I can learn from him. Number 5, compare progress gained in your life, not just the progress that needs to be gained. Compare progress gained in your life, not just the progress that needs to be gained. Look at your life. Look where you were a year ago and look back and be like, hey, I've came a long ways in the last year. You want to start comparing? Compare your life of where it used to be. Thank God we're not where we used to be. We still not where we want to be, but hey, at least I'm not back where I was. Number 6, I love this one. This one, someone better run on this. Publicly praise the success of others, especially the ones that got what you wanted. My gosh. When someone gets what we want, we're like, I wanted that. Why did they get that? God, you knew I was praying for that. You knew I wanted that job. You knew I wanted that raise. You knew I needed that new car because mine was falling apart. I worked way harder than them. Don't compare. You want to do that? Praise what they just got. Do it. Praise the success of others. The ones that got what you wanted. Number 7. This is our last one. Never stop reminding yourself who you are. Stop comparing yourself. You got to, instead of compare, remind yourself who you are. And Samuel Johnson said this. He was an English writer. He said, people need to be reminded a lot more than they need to be instructed. So we got to remind ourselves. So let me remind you who you are this morning. They'll put it up here. We don't go through all of them. We ain't going to go through every verse, but you could take a picture of this if you wanted to put it on your bathroom wall, whatever. But I'm going to remind you who you are. It says, I am loved in 1 John 3:3. I am accepted in Ephesians 1:6. I am a child of God in John chapter 1, verse 12. I am the joint heir with Christ, Romans chapter 8, verse 17. I am the member of Christ's body, 1 Corinthians 12:27. I am a saint, Ephesians 1:1. I am redeemed and forgiven, Colossians 1:14. I am complete in Jesus Christ, Colossians 2:10. I am free from condemnation, Romans 8, verse 1. I am a new creation because I am in Christ, 2 Corinthians 5:17. I am chosen of God, holy and dearly loved, Colossians 3:12. I am God's workmanship, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. And there's so many more in the Bible. But I pray this morning that you learn who you are, because when you know who you are, you get to know who you don't have to be. Amen. Will you stand up with me this morning? I want to pray for you this morning, and every head bowed, every eye closed this morning. And maybe you're in here and you've been caught in the comparison trap. And maybe you've really never asked Jesus to be Lord of your life. Everything else has been your life. Everything else has been the Lord of your life. If Jesus is not Lord of all, he's not Lord at all. So he's got to be Lord of it all. So if you're in here this morning and say, Pastor Brody, I've never accepted Jesus to be the Lord of my life. Or maybe you're in here and you say, I got away from it. And I started doing my own thing and living my own way. I want you if that's you, I just want you to lift your hands this morning. No one looking around. We're not going to know. People around you aren't going to know. But I just want you to make that commitment to God. Just lift your hand in here if that's you. Hands all over the place. I just want to follow Jesus. I just want to know Jesus more today. I want to return back to God. And then maybe those of us in here that had just been stuck in the comparison trap, that can't seem to get out of it, that we keep thinking we're not good enough. And I want to tell you this morning, you are good enough. You are a child of God. God gave you gifts. God gave you breath in your lungs so to use what he gave you, to run your race, to get rid of sin, to fix our eyes on Jesus, and to fight until he comes back. So if that's you in here this morning, and everyone can just say this prayer after me, say, Dear Jesus, come into my life. Be the Lord of my life. Thank you for dying on the cross for me. By your grace, I am saved. By your power, I am set free. And I choose to live for you. Not just for today, but every day. And I choose to shut the door on comparison. Comparison can't stay in my life anymore because I am fearfully and wonderfully made.